Hello and welcome back. This is Frantz Kantor here, cartoonist, illustrator, toon talker, teacher, tinker, tailor, spy, all of that stuff. I'm doing another caricature. Aren't you surprised? I think we've got a lot of stuff to do with caricatures, so I need to kind of get it out of my system a little bit. And I hope you're enjoying the process. I'm just lining this up, sorry. A little bit of a issue happening here. Okay, so sorry, the phone just left a tighten that a little bit. So sorry, I hit it accidentally, and I think we'll just have to live with that. Today I'm doing a caricature of someone I've done before, Graham Kennedy. So this is Gra. Where is he? There he is. And that's in sort of the height of his career. There he is with his partner in crime, Bert Newton, Moonface. I'm working from the Pitt the Younger. No, I'm working from Graham Kennedy's younger days, early days of TV, because I've done a couple of caricatures before when he was on, I think he had a news show, Channel 9, so it was well after his Tonight Show. And I just wanted to explore a little bit about his face. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer here. Not that familiar with Graham Kennedy's early days of his face. So I've been trying to work out different solutions to this. I kind of favour this one here because I think it's more expressive. So I've got, to focus on the eyes. He's obviously got very big eyes like Marty Feldman. Not quite as big, but still getting towards the Marty Feldman and can't remember the Rodney Dangerfield stage. So I don't know what that condition's called, but what it means is you've got these very expressive eyes, and they know how to use them. So it's something that comes with the territory, I guess. You probably are quite aware of Graham Kennedy's comedy style. He was called the King of Comedy, and rightly so, I think. Even though he's not sort of known for a lot of, I don't think he's ever done stand-up, but he did, variety shows. And he was very prolific, so, it was sort of a remarkable person, which means that, the day after the show, people would remark upon him, whether they liked him or not. He fell foul of censors a lot of the times, and I think even with his boss, Kerry Packer. But undeniable talent, for the ability to connect with the audience. Part of that connectivity is, with the empathy that you experience when you look into these great big dishes. So let's, we're just sort of trying to get this rough shape here, which I think might work. Again, it may not. So, we're just going to explore this together. I don't know whether this will work for me. I have done caricatures of him before, more of a, like the classic period and more sort of frontal versions of the caricature. But I'd like to sort of experiment with this. There is a sort of a tilt, sort of this squeezing down of the, the tilting of the forms. I'll just explain what's happening over here. So if this is his face, the eyes are aligned to they're in line, obviously, but they're kind of tilted. So he's kind of looking up under his brow, and he's got a raised brow. So he's getting this sort of it's quite a complex move. I can't quite explain it. So the face is facing downwards. There's also a light source which is on the opposite side of where his face is facing. So that's going to create shadows on this side of the face, right, of the head. So that's something we have to think about. The other thing is too, with caricatures, again, we're talking about the mask or the T-zone, this area that we focus on, which is the eyes and the nose and the mouth. So the relationship between each of these is crucial to people being able to read it as two things, as a recognizable face, so the features talk to one another, they have a relationship with one another, and also they're key to the expression, right? So, there are muscles pushing all the time to create smiles and grimaces and things like that. So that's an area that we have to think about as we go. So there's a lot of things to consider, Again, I just want to make it perfectly clear. This may not work, because what I'm trying to do is I'm exploring something that's quite unfamiliar, and I'm doing it with no safety net. So I haven't actually worked out, I haven't drawn his face from this angle before, nor have I drawn his face where he's obviously a younger version of himself. So whatever the medical condition is for the eyes, being prominent in the face, it's not as pronounced, obviously, in this version. But, there is a certain recognition factor. Now, what I'm trying to do here is construct these lines, but at the same time correct the tone, because the tone is going to be vital in creating the believability of these eyes working for us, because they're very blue, they're very light, and the skin around them, they're bulging out. So there's a lot of stuff happening here which is quite subtle, and I've got to really keep an eye on the modelling, the shading of the forms that I'm drawing. Okay. So we'll have some fun, even if it doesn't look like him. It doesn't really matter. We're going to. I'm just going to have some fun with this, because that's what drawing should be. It should be exploration. It should be fun. It shouldn't be a trial or tribulation. So I'm starting with the eyes because I think they're kind of key to his expression and his recognition factor. He communicated an awful lot with these great big orbs. So he was able to create sort of a very subtle form of communication with the audience, and that was key to his comedy. It was sort of like creating an in-joke, and even when he swore, like he had this sort of he was warned, I think, a few times about dropping F-bombs and things on live TV, and in the end he just did it, but couched it within a phrase, he called it a crow call. So instead of saying the F word, he just said F-A-A-A-A-A-A-R-K in a crow voice, as if it was an actual bird call. He was just testing the sensor. And he used to do that with comedy, with commercials as well. And with great effect, really off script, which I guess the advertisers were perplexed about. So why would you go off script? It's because he was investigating how far he could go. He was pushing the envelope, and that's what's important with everything in your life. To push that envelope. That's what I'm doing here. I don't know if this will work. I'm pushing this envelope. There's a lot of stuff here that I'm finding in this face, and I'm actually having a good time doing it. So you guys are along for the ride. So let's see what happens with this. There's a lot of pushing and pulling. There's a certain amount of frenetic energy which comes from nervousness. Yeah, but a lot of comedians are closet introverts. So that's not really surprising, because it's sort of like overcompensating for their fear of failure or fear of embarrassing themselves, so they intentionally embarrass themselves to get laughs, right? So in the end, the people are not laughing at them. They are laughing at them, but they're in control of them laughing at them. There's a lot of beautiful, delicate and complicated creases in his forehead, which I'm trying to do without counting, but I think I might get a bit lost. But they're quite delicate and very, very expressive. Again, these are things that complement the eyes. So there's a lot of elements that surround the eyes. These are muscles below the eyes, muscles above the eyes, and then continue on in ripples, like the ripples of a pond. So if you can think of the ripples circling out from a stone dropped in the pond. So his eyes are like limpid pools. Someone's dropped a stone in there. Fuck! So, yeah, that was a crow call. That's how it sort of, he became kind of known for that, because it was a symbol of him pushing against the envelope. We all should push against our envelopes, Don't just stand there and accept the banal, the banality of existence. Push against it and be creative and funny. If you want to be funny, be creative and funny. He certainly did that, At the same time, he had a very human aspect to his comedy too. So, he had a very shy. He looks very shy and looks like he's overcompensating for that shyness. Which is often the case for comedy. But that's also how it's popular, because that sense of vulnerability, which you can now clearly see in this expression, it's one of the things that make us connect with the comedian, with the person, right? Because we are vulnerable. All of us are vulnerable inside. We're just scared little children in a way, and isn't pencil great for drawing hair? I just love it. It's just so cool. So cool. So the tears of a clown, the coping mechanisms of comedians. Very interesting and informative and human. And that's what we connect with. We connect with that human vulnerability. Just as a black tie. These are like little thin lapels from the early 60s, I think, which probably means the late 60s in Australia. Australia for a long time was a little bit behind the times with fashion. I caught up quite quickly in the 60s, late 60s. That's when I had flares. Red ones. It's a little kid with flares. So, so far so good, huh? I'm just trying to, I want to get some light in there, and I don't want to cover the grey paper with a lot of brown lines. I quite like the way that the contrast is being built up. There's a nice sort of hairy texture. So I like that. It's a hairy texture. So I'm kind of giving it like a space around the head to catch a little bit of light that I'm going to put in, even though it may not be in the photograph so much. It's something that I think would help make the character pop a little bit more. So it's like restaging, making decisions that are for the best result of the image, of the illustration, of the caricature. So one thing actually I'm tending to leave out or omit is a lot of these sharp angles and things which are quite nice to find in a face, because it gives a lot of variety, And Graham Kennedy's all about variety. It's the Graham Kennedy Show. The Graham Kennedy Experience. So my mother, of course, being from Melbourne, was a big Gra fan, and to the dismay of my father, probably. So he was always on TV in our house, and it was great seeing, what you guys in Melbourne had on TV in the National 9 network. So it was good fun. So we had obviously it's national networks, and not all of the shows were not all the shows were equal. I used to love a horror show called a horror movie presenter called Deadly Earnest, and your Deadly Earnest was better than the Sydney one, and I was a bit miffed when I found that out. Miffed, to say the least. I thought we had something in common, but you had a better Deadly Earnest. I think it was from Melbourne. Could have even been from Adelaide. For all I know, it could be. You're a lot closer than Adelaide than we were. So what I'm doing here is I'm cheating. I'm cheating here. Okay, here I said it. This is it. Now these eyes, this is his younger self, his younger career. So these eyes are big, but they're not as big as they would get later on in life, but I'm kind of remembering that process a little bit in the other caricatures that I did. So that's why I'm kind of favouring the bigger size, the jumbo size, rather than the economy size eyes. That's what I like. I kind of like that. It's beautiful shadows, so clean and sharp. These shapes around his face, and some of them so subtle, like the lines around his nose, for example. Again, these are like indicators of tension, pulling in the upper part of the head, around the eyes especially, concentrating on the head. So there's a lot of worry lines, not so much worry, but shock, surprise. There's a lot of surprises in his life over there. And he has this, he has a sort of a thin lip, but a tough bottom lip. And it kind of sticks out a little bit. So, and he's got this sort of like pensive sucking in of the mouth as well, which is kind of indicates not a lot of speaking. There's not a lot of talking here. It doesn't argue a lot. He just thinks about things, reflects a lot. You could tell there's a lot of reflection in this. So he thinks a lot about, his troubles or himself. That's what it's telling me. I don't know for sure, but the lines kind of indicate certain things. Over time they create wrinkles, and the wrinkles just like erosion, like rivers and things over millions of years eroding to create valleys and things like that, stronger landforms. That's the same thing with features on a face. It'd be really interesting if we could live to be 1,000 years old, then or even 1,000,000 years old. Wouldn't that be great? Our faces, what would they look like? The sum total of all of our thoughts and feelings. Thoughts and feelings. That's what happens. So thoughts and feelings create visible character on your face. And, it's a very interesting thing to read this as you draw. I never really thought about this, to be honest, for many, many, many years. And then when I started doing portraits are a lot slower than caricatures. You do it over several weeks. So you're looking at the likeness of somebody, and while you're drawing them, you're psychoanalyzing them. You don't mean to, it just happens. So it's just something that occurs in the process. It's free, I don't charge for this service. But, it's something that, again, this is an interpretive dance. It's not a structured, choreographed routine here. So your interpretations of somebody's feelings comes from the ability that we all possess in reading faces. So as children, we look at, we do something and we look at our parents, and if they have that angry face, right, which we symbolize like this, then we know that don't do that, we shouldn't do that. If they have a happy face like this, we symbolize with a happy face, an emoji, right, then we are rewarded because that is positive. Yay! And this is negative. What's the opposite of yay? Boo! So let's go. Let's hit him with some more contrasty colours. We're going to get some black. We've just been using terracotta, which is a beautiful name. It comes from clay. It's not made out of clay. Terracotta. This is a Prismacolor, which is a beautiful soft waxy pencil. And we've also got that in white, so we'll be using white as well. Let's put some white in there actually. You know what we might do is we might hit it with a white paint marker just for some absolute contrast here. So we're going to put these beautiful reflections of spotlights in his eyes, just a little bit. You notice that I'm not colouring the eyes white. And you might be thinking, why is that? And my answer would be, mind your own business. No, my answer would be, let me think about my answer. My answer is, of course, that the eyes are not white. They're not white. When you want to express something as shiny, you can't have the whole area white. You know, even though it's called the white of the eyes, it ain't white. It's a color. It's got blood vessels in it. It's fairly translucent. In other words, you can see blood vessels. You can see the muscle underneath, or the organ, or whatever it is that... What is that thing? What is that thing? We don't know. So, yeah, it's not white. So lay off with the white, okay? It's only white if you want to express it as a symbol, which is fine, but then it's not... You're not referring so much to real life, are you? If it's a symbol. So these are things. I'm going to go over there, put some. You may as well try build it up a little bit over there. Kind of nice. Have a side light, rim light, whatever they call it. A rim shot. Don't know why they called that. But let's go. Look how they give you a pencil. What the hell pencil sharpener makes this point? The machine-made points of pencils. It's a very soft, you can see it starting to break the wood. So it's a very soft pencil. It's very soft, waxy pigment in a sort of a waxy solution. So luckily, it's, you know, this paper has a slight tooth to it, so it can pick up a bit of the white texture without too much trouble. So again, don't colour the whole eye. It's not all white. Think about also there's like reflections that come in to the eye surface, over the eye surface to keep, you know, draw things like glass eyes. Draw things like jewels and things like that to have, you know, an idea of textures of light and what you can easily try to accomplish with a simple observation and a simple method of description with a pencil. So just describe it organically, you know. Just build it up as you go, as you feel the appropriate response to the light and shade in the forms. That's what we're drawing. We're drawing light and shade. That's why we've got grey paper. Light and shade. So this paper comes in book form. It's grey. There's also a tone paper, but you can get, this is a Strathmore, but you can get many different, you can get pastel paper from the art store or from, you know, Art Riot or Eckersley's or anything like that, craft stores, art stores. Even craft paper, you know, which is like brown paper. You can use brown paper. But brown paper, a lot of brown paper is quite thin and shiny, so you probably want to use the thicker thicker variety would give you a better effect. Now, when I said to you before, we may not get this likeness, it's true. But we're going to give it a hell of a try. And I'm actually learning quite a lot out of this too. You know, there's a lot of form. Form is not even. It's not colouring in. We're actually sculpting forms as we go. You know, the curvature of the eyelids and stuff. Luckily, he's got great big blinkers. So it's easy for us to. And we were just picking on him merely, but you know, he's beautiful eyes. What can you say? They're very big and expressive. So light falls differently on different surfaces. The ear is quite more complex series of light and shade. It's not just the forms themselves, it's also the texture. So the inside of the ear is a little bit oilier, so it'll be more reflective. There'll be like a light point inside the ear itself. So you look at these things as you go. Observe them and then think about them while you're drawing them. I'm going to put a side light down here too to complement this effect and a building on the back of the head. Just a bit of a side light. Complement it down there, down there, down there, etc. So this is just with the white. I'm going in with a black pencil too, so we're going to be heating it up with some more contrast to build up a little bit of drama here, because this story requires that. I think there's a lot of complex light and shade happening. Textures, different textures of skin. So don't take anything for granted, you know, where the light is, where the dark is. Just look before you leap. Make sure that whatever you do is an appropriate response, not, you know, oh, I have to colour in this area. No. Refer back to its reference, its origin, and see how appropriate that is to put that colour in there, that tone. So he was always on TV when I was growing up. So I never really had I never really got into his humour as such. I knew that he was communicating directly with the audience. So he had a sort of a tongue-in-cheek style of repertoire, you know, and like for example when he did, you can Google this. It'll come up on YouTube. Graham Kennedy commercials or outtakes, Graham Kennedy show outtakes. You'll see how vulnerable he was with his personality. He's very, very sort of shy and reserved mainly, but would overcompensate with this humour. And the ads were really unpredictable, much to the shock of the advertisers, I'm sure. But you know, again, the whole thing went. It's about communicating with feeling, and so you can't really be too angry because you know the ads would work. Whether he made fun of your product or not, it would still work as an ad, you know. ads that work by communication. There's different methods of communication. There's the overt scripted method, or the unscripted method. And the unscripted method is what he perfected. He was really, really good at that because he was a perfect communicator. Physical communicator with his eyes and with his personality. He just connected with people because people could read it easily. Big eyes. They could read them easily, but again, he had that shyness that sort of came through. And that, I guess, was the things that made people appreciate him and notice him, remember him. I'm sure he was very remarkable. The show, What Little We Got in Sydney, was very, very remarkable. Which means people would be talking about it at the water cooler the next day. So comedy is like a very complex thing, and yet doesn't need to be, because it's part of our makeup, part of our humour is part of the human condition. So when somebody slips on a banana peel, we have a ability to step back and laugh at the situation, even if the person gets hurt. It's called Schadenfreude, but it basically it's where the concern, a person got hurt, that's not nice, I can imagine what that feels like on your tailbone, that's awesome, that's awful, right? And you balance that against the fact that so relieved it's not me feeling that pain. And that momentary disconnect from the empathy, which we all naturally feel, that disconnect is where the humor comes from. It's like it's funny. That's why we find it funny, because it's like a momentarily relief that it's not you. Sounds awful, doesn't it? But that's why Reddit works. So looking at the face here, and there's a lot of, he's got, as I said, blue eyes and things. There's a lot of textures which are beautifully described with the contrasts of black and white. It's all the different values, light and dark values. Yeah, let's do that. Put these hairs in there. That's good, that'll do. Again, how wonderful pencil is to describe hair. It's just so easy. So building up a bit of contrast in the hair, massive hair itself, there's a lot of shine and variety, light and shade. So I want to try and get some of that in there. Oh, actually I might just use this to, otherwise I'll drag pigment across the page. It'll be picking it up and depositing it everywhere. Yeah, so I'm not taking my eyes off the reference. I'm referring to it constantly. Occasionally I'll put something in there that's not there, that I think should be there. But mostly I'm referring to the reference. All right, we'll push on, shall we? Be careful. You tend to outline things if you start. It's important to resist the temptation to outline. Not too much. I mean, obviously things like the outside of the ear is good, but don't, outline every little bit of detail, because there's a lot more subtlety. You've already described it with the brown pencil, so don't over-describe it, because then it's shouting. It's just not appropriate to overemphasize all of the shapes, all of the forms. Okay. I'm guessing where these eyelashes are. I don't know where they are because the photograph's blurry, but I'm pretty sure they're there. I mean, some people just have very, very pale eyelashes. Okay, it's time to get into this nose now. The nose it's a three-dimensional thing we're trying to draw here, so it might be worthwhile bringing the nose out a little bit. Let's continue with the cheek. That's a nice curve. I'm going to go over with the pen, a brush pen, in a minute to increase the validity, the value of these lines, so that they get a little bit of help with black ink. So I tend to round these forms off a little bit too much, and I'm losing a bit of the sharp edges, sharp angles, which I initially try to go for. It was very Australian, wasn't it? You flecked up the things I'm trying to go for. Okay, we're making good progress with the black pencil. Happy with the way that's coming about. I like the angles of the suit. It's pretty good. Let's try to articulate this window frame a little bit more. And the one on the left, and then the one underneath. Fix up the signature box. That'll do. Alright, so let's go in with some white, and then we'll go in with some black. Looking back and forth to the image to see how far I can go with these highlights, how much highlight is appropriate. There's a bit of light down there coming back, reflected into the nose on the edge there too, so just a little bit, bring that back. There's also another shadow, another highlight over on that side. How much is too much? You might be overplaying it a little bit. Okay, what can we do with this? We're going to use a brush pen. If I can find one. I've got a table full of stuff. This might work. This is a Zig brush pen. It's a very flexible nib. Let's have a look at this, see? So it can get a very thin line and a very thick line. That's what we want. Ooh, don't want to. It's probably dry. I'm not going to slide my hand. I'm just going to lift it up and plonk it down here and there. Remember, he's got blue eyes. The blue eyes don't have a lot of outlines around the iris. So thick and thin means you're giving your lines variety, which means they describe things differently. They describe form differently. So you outline to draw attention to the contours, to the outlines themselves. And the reason why you do that is to have them stand out definitively from other features and from the background. So it's kind of a nice element to bring to the party. Let's actually give him a bit of variety on the tie. There you go, give him a striped tie just for the hell of it. Be a bit careful with the black, but seems to work all right. I just think something's missing from it. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the way that's working. I might just actually, instead of using a black background, what I'm trying to do is to create a difference, a pop of the face out of this window. So I think what I might try to do is use a white pen, a white paint marker, and create a series of hatch lines. So make the black pen line stand out and have the features of the halftone of the skin stand out as well. And that gives it a nice sort of punchy effect. Okay, that will work. By the way, pencil, it doesn't have to be a smooth form of shading. It could be in lines like this, like hatch lines, like you would if you were doing it in pen, you know. There should always be a variety of stroke in the pencil itself. It's quite good for that. But you don't have to use it to colour in. You can use it to cross hatch, so leave a little bit of the paper underneath to show through. So it's a very complex personality, but it's not so complex that you can't sort of get an idea of who he is, you know, behind the mask, so to speak. He's a very sensitive person. You can tell that from the expression and from the intricate lines, etc. Let's write his name. Actually, let's double check, make sure that the spelling is... no E there. Graham Kennedy. Well, that looked all right to me. It's you know, as far as the likeness is concerned, that's the before, that's the after. I kind of like the face. I like what I've done with the eyes in particular. They're very expressive. There's an interesting light source catching this cheek, you know, which is giving them this quite subtle, almost like an impatient, fold of the lips to one side. So there's a lot of very interesting things happening here, a lot of very interesting story. It's a very, very powerful comedian, you know, the king of comedy. I think suits him well as a title. All right, well, this is Frantz Kantor. I hope you had a good time. And this is Graham Kennedy. And I will catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.